Before we get started, make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. YouTube has been randomly unsubscribing a lot of people. A lot of folks who think that they're subscribed, they keep looking and realizing that they're not, and then they wonder why they don't get any notifications. Also, be sure to hit the bell. That way, once you are subscribed, there's less of a chance that you'll miss out on when the latest video drops. Also, if you're not following me on Twitter, the link is in the description. Now, that said, as the presidential primary season has officially gotten underway, the black media has staked out the black community's interests in all of this. And what we see is the bad guys don't want us telling the black truth of what's going on in this dirty little election, which is as filthy as all the others before it has been. As the presidential race is coming closer, we've seen a full court press to try to help cobble together some sort of half-baked political coalition, albeit one that doesn't involve the black community, at least not in its totality. And we also see the white media attempting to conceal this fact from the black community, trying to make sure that it gets covered up. We don't want this to be repeated, at least not too many times. We need this to be silent. That way, there's going to be ambiguity. We don't want this to be front of mind for the black community. See, what's going on is the political left arm of white supremacy, calling itself the Democrats, they're trying to cast a wide net. They're trying to rebrand themselves, and we're reaching out to everybody because the black community is no longer a reliable base for them. The black community is making demands. And that being the case, well, we need Negroes to keep on voting against their interest. And we also need to keep it quiet what we're doing. That way, while we start reaching out to all of these other demographics, particularly casual racists, read white moderates, well, the black community, we want them to see it, but we don't want them to think too much about it. We want for the plausible deniability to be there. We want the cognitive dissonance to kick in. They'll see us reaching out to all of these people who are hostile to the black community, but we want the black community to kind of give a shrug, or to better yet, to make excuses for it and say, well, that's just some of them, or, well, it's not as bad as all that, or, well, they're trying to win and we got to beat Trump, and sometimes you got to make a deal with the devil and you got to choose the lesser of two evils. That's what they're betting on here. And isn't that what we've been doing for the longest time, for decade after decade, election after election, to try to find a way to feel better about the fact that instead of pushing and pressing our interests, which are the most pressing and the most deserving of all demographics, instead what we decided was we would make excuses for why it was okay to ignore us yet again. Oh, we got to vote for these guys who ain't going to do a dang thing for us. Oh, we got to vote for these people even though they trade in the exact same racist tropes that they claim that the Republicans have some sort of monopoly on. You got two political parties, neither one of them doing a damn thing for us, but we'll vote for these guys over here because, well, at least they don't call us the N-word to our faces very often. That voting for the lesser of two evils nonsense. It was Kwame Ture who said that moral people don't vote for evil at all. Forget about the lesser of two evils. Moral people don't choose evil. So that's something the white media is not going to tell you. They're going to try to con you into thinking, oh, voting for evil, that's some sort of lopsided, lame-brained political pragmatism. No, it's not. Moral people, people who want their power, they're going to look and say, I'm going to vote for whoever the good guy is on the ballot. Oh, there is no good guy on the ballot? Then I'm going to make sure that there's one. I'm going to put one on the ballot. See, that's what the good guys do. That's what moral people do. That's what people who are serious about their power do. It is the powerless. It is the apathetic, the weak-willed and weak-minded who decide to go along with the okey doke, and I'll go ahead and choose from whatever hand-picked slate of cronies of white supremacy get presented to me, and don't expect me to rock the boat, and I'll make excuses for why there's nothing I can do, and I'll resign myself to my fate, and I'll be damned if I'm going to challenge the status quo. See, that's what happens when you're weak. People who are serious about their power, they look and go, God dang it, I'm not going to stop fighting until I change this, because I'm not going to stop fighting until I get my power. Democrats are sitting here trying to convince you that they're just doing some all hands on deck. Oh, Trump is the biggest threat out there, so the black community should sit on its hands while we go ahead and try to see if we can replace you. We're going to make a political statement by showing that the black community is completely and thoroughly politically expendable. trying to stop this black empowerment push before it even gets started good. And this political pivot that the Democrats are doing, this is not new at all. In her failed 2016 run, Hillary Clinton blatantly began to praise, quote, hardworking white people in her stump speeches. Yeah, she wasn't leaving anything up to the imagination. She was making it clear exactly where she stands, and at the same time talking about so-called super predators, i.e. black men in any shape, form, or fashion. You got a black baby, that's a super predator. You got an old black man who's blind in a wheelchair. He's a super predator too. Everybody understood exactly what Hillary Clinton was saying. This is why you got the Democratic Party and their hangers-on and their agents who have slithered among us. This is why they're all so hot and bothered. You got the Democratic establishment so hot and bothered about Joe Biden being the nominee. This is the reason why they're looking at him and they're drooling at the mouth and going, yep, this is the guy who needs to be on the ticket. The Democratic Party is going full retard and reverting back to being unabashed Dixiecrats. Not that they stopped, but now it's a matter of they're putting aside any pretense because we're turning up the heat on them. We're making it where they can no longer take anything for granted. We're destabilizing and disrupting their little hustle. And as a result, we're making it where we put the bastards' backs to the wall. Things are going bad for them ahead of schedule, and they don't have an answer for that. Except for, let's do something desperate. I did a video essay recently about how the Washington Post itself was lauding Joe Biden because he appealed to white racial resentment. This is the Washington Post attempting to praise Joe Biden for that. Racially resentful whites are a good thing in the eyes of the Washington Post. And it's also a good thing in the eyes of the Democratic Party. Well, that video was removed by what I can only assume to be racially resentful white people. That's the only thing I can assume, because who else would be offended by that? If you're a white person who's not racially resentful, why, you should have no problem with that whatsoever. But many of those racially resentful white people work for YouTube. And we should not have any illusions whatsoever about that fact. Now, why did they decide they would attack this video in particular? It's because this video struck a chord. And it's also because they don't want this precedent being set. They don't want anyone to be making an issue in the black community out of the electoral strategy of the political left arm of white supremacy. They don't want this to be front of mind for our people. This is about making sure the black vote is neutralized. That's what the Democrats are attempting to do. This is a political neutralization operation taking place. With this pathetic attempt to try to super glue together some Frankenstein monster of a non-black voter coalition, one that doesn't rely on the black vote. But to make sure that the agenda of tangibles is contained, they want to prove that they can win without black votes. Because that being the case, all of this tap dancing around the issue of our tangibles that's been going on was good. You better believe they will be blatantly coming out and saying, nobody wants this, we ain't do it. But right now, they're trying to be somewhat tactful about it. Because it's a matter of they don't want to be permanently in the political wilderness. And they can't get us off this issue. So what they're doing right now is they're paying lip service to, reparations. Oh, yes, we think about it a whole lot. But what they also are trying to do is leave the door open for, now after we prove to these niggers that we can win without them, then we're gonna go ahead and tell them the same thing you got the white media saying. Oh, you guys are a fringe. You guys are a bunch of kooks. You guys are way out of the mainstream. Nobody is with you. That is something that reparation. Are you crazy? Look, the Civil War is over. Look, we hate to sound like the Republicans, but it's really time the black community got over it. That's what they're trying to lay the groundwork for. That's what this is really about. This is about trying to create a pathway for them to take the hard line against us, because nobody's ever taken the issue of tangibles this far before. You see, in 2015, when you had NIMBY-nominated producers who were thinking to themselves that they were going to start buddying themselves up with the white media, and they were playing on their prosecutorial bona fides, While that was going on in 2015 from some other quarters who weren't thinking about tangibles, weren't talking about tangibles, weren't talking about reparations, and damn sure weren't talking about slavery, over here in the black media, we were talking about it, talking about tangibles. And if the Democratic Party don't step up to us with some tangibles, we're going to sit this one out. That's what we were talking about in 2015. While other people, Johnny-come-latelys, were talking about other stuff, trying to figure out how they could make themselves into some sort of half-baked media celebrities. The black media was out there banging the drum for our tangibles. And what happened was we disrupted not merely the 2016 election, but also the 2018 midterms. And now we're about to disrupt the 2020 elections. They're understanding here. There's a group of black folks out there who have discovered the magic ingredient: persistence. We have made our peace with the fact that this is not going to be some one and done operation. It won't be over in 5 minutes. We're not going to have our tangibles before the next commercial break. We have made our peace with that. This is going to be the new normal. And that's what they're most scared of. Because what they understand is, even if they did step up to us with a $20 trillion check, it'd be like, oh, hold on, homie. Yeah, that's just the down payment. Oh, what does that mean, buddy? What it means is tangibles is a hell of a lot more than just being compensated for the greatest crime in human history. Even if slavery had never happened, we would still require our tangibles by benefit of the fact that we are citizens. This country is supposed to be giving us those tangibles simply because of the fact that we're citizens. That's all we had to do to get our tangibles. That's supposed to be your birthright. And you're supposed to be demanding that, and they're supposed to understand that's part of the bargain, because these chumps on Wall Street, many of whom are not even citizens of the United States, they're getting all sorts of blank checks from the U.S. government. And they crashed the freaking global economy. We built this nation. We built this nation's economy. So you're not going to do less for us than you do for a bunch of folk who just showed up yesterday and damn near destroyed the country. See, that's the black empowerment mindset. That's the B1 mentality. And that is precisely the kind of mentality that they are desperate to make sure does not take hold in the black community. They don't want us talking like this. And they are determined to do anything it takes to stop us from talking like this. And the Democrats, the left arm of white supremacy, they understand that if they failed to win without us, and the way that we've been banging the drum, and the way that we've been knocking off their candidates, and the way that we've been getting in their faces, and how we've been building this critical mass of black folks, and they can't escape this message now, they understand that when they failed to win in 2020, what that means is we have effectively amputated half of the political scam that white supremacy is running. We are amputating the political left arm of white supremacy. They're understanding that. And they also understand that they have lost their influence with us. We are not looking to them to validate what we're doing. We are not looking to them to approve of what we're doing. We're not looking to them and, well, if they acknowledge it, then that means it's important. We don't give a damn if they never acknowledge it. This is not about winning points with the white media. This is not about scoring points with the propaganda arm of white supremacy. We do not judge our progress by what the white media is saying. If they acknowledge us, then we're relevant. If they don't, then we're completely and thoroughly irrelevant. This ain't about them. And that's what they see. We are making a clean break with the institutions of white supremacy and leaving them swinging in the wind. Now, why does it matter that we are amputating the political left arm of white supremacy? Why does that even matter? Here's the reason why. The United States is a pluralistic society, or at least it occasionally acts like one. Most of the time just pays lip service to the idea. But in order to keep a pluralistic society in check, you of a necessity require pluralistic elections, or rather the appearance of pluralistic elections. You gotta make it seem like people have a choice. It's kind of like the Matrix Reloaded, the second Matrix movie. Remember when Neo was talking with the architect, the old white guy who looked like Colonel Sanders? And what happened was the architect explained, and this is just a matter of showing you that the guys who run Hollywood have a better understanding of the society than the citizens who are in the society. But what the architect explained was that when the machines first set up the Matrix, what happened was the people, human beings, refused to accept the Matrix, mainly because of the fact that it was being imposed upon them with absolutely no freedom whatsoever. Because of the fact that there was just this harsh imposition of the matrix, people's minds rejected it. They refused to accept it. And you remember that he said that an intuitive program, talking about the Oracle, had stumbled upon a solution where over 99% of the subjects would accept the programming of the Matrix so long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at the subconscious level. You know, that's a bit of dialogue that explains the social engineering that white supremacy has done through its political system. You see, when people are in a monolithic political system, they've only got one person to blame for anything that goes wrong. They have a clear, singular focus. If they're oppressed, they know exactly who the hell to blame it on. There is no means of deranging their political focus through false choices and red herrings. They know that they don't have a choice because it's clear they don't have a choice, and they know who to blame for it. Political apathy doesn't last very long in a unilateral government. It's clear to the people who are in charge, and it's also clear to them who's going to be the focus of the public's hate. So what you have to do is you've got to have a system that's a little more sophisticated than that. Some Negroes deny that white supremacy is sophisticated. You keep a system like this in place for half a millennium because there's a bunch of stumble bums who ain't got the sense the guy gave a turnip. There are a lot of black folks who are not even anywhere near the road to being free, nor should they be free. They don't even understand the chains that are binding them. But as it stands, you got to make sure that you give the people a false choice. Make the people into accomplices in their own oppression. Make it where they invest in the very system that is oppressing them, because once people invest in something, like the people who invest in certain red herring, phony baloney LGBT front groups pretending to be for reparations, pretending to be black empowerment. When people invest in something like that, what will happen is for a large number of them, it will become virtually impossible to get them to break away from it or let it go because they've invested in it. It's like a con man. The con man understands the power of getting the mark to invest in the con. Because most people, once they've invested in a con man, one of two outcomes will happen. Either they will wise up to the scam, but be so embarrassed and be just so basically angry at themselves that they really don't do anything about it. Or, and this is much more likely, the people who have bought into the scam, they're going to try to find a way to justify their behavior. They're going to try to find a way to rationalize it. Try to find a way to say that I wasn't scammed, why it was something else. And that's what happens. They just basically double down, triple down, quadruple down on stupid. And it's not because they can't see the scam. You can explain it to them. They can admit to it. But what they're doing is they're trying to protect their own fragile egos. That's what's at play there. You've got to get the mark to become an accomplice in his own oppression. And that's what white supremacy has been doing with the American people, the black community in specific, when it comes to the political system. By setting up a false choice, making it where you think, why, I got somebody who's talking just like me and they're on my side, and this guy, he's for me. See, that's what happens when you put a sophisticated system in place. You want to make it where people are oppressed for the long haul. Don't set up a unilateral system. Don't make it monolithic. Make it where you give them a few false choices. 3 or 4 people, or even political parties of people, who say what seems to be 3 or 4 different positions on the issues, and the public thinks that the system that they're under can be changed if they vote for one of the political puppets being presented to them. The public never realizes, and many of them don't want to accept, that these political puppets are nothing more than employees serving the same single master. Instead, the people invest in these con men. They allow themselves to be reduced to nothing more than political cheerleaders who are getting out there doing rah, rah, rah for their team, never willing to accept or realize that they're not getting anything out of it, even when their team wins. FDR and the Democrats were in power in the White House for 16 years. Did that improve a lot of black people? Because FDR, when he was running, he made a big plea to the black community. Vote for me. And black folks were like, yeah, well, y'all Democrats, y'all are a bunch of bigots. And after all, the Republicans are the party of Lincoln, et cetera, et cetera. And what Franklin Roosevelt said was, well, in that case, then don't vote for the Democrats. I'm asking you to vote for me. And when he got in there, you had people like Walter White, who was then head of the NAACP, saying, Mr. President, when are you going to do something about this segregation? When are you going to do something about this racial oppression? And Roosevelt, in fact, one of the earliest recordings of the White House taping system in the 1930s was Roosevelt sitting here dissembling to Walter White and telling him all the stuff he couldn't do. And the same thing went with President Kennedy telling Dr. King and the rest of the civil rights activists all the stuff he couldn't do. So it's a matter of, you got to vote for me. Why? Because of all the stuff I can't do. And black folks continually, well, if the Republicans get in there, it'll be even worse. Well, what's worse than someone doing nothing for you? Well, it's because all the stuff the Republican Democrats is because we're trying to get them to stop the Republicans from doing all this stuff to us. They're telling you be afraid of what the Republicans are going to do. Hell, the Republicans are doing it. See what kind of cognitive dissonance you have to engage in. You have to, first of all, deny the fact that the Republicans are already having free reign to run roughshod over you. And then the Democrats tell you that if you vote for me, we'll do something. And then as soon as you vote for them, they say, well, you need to vote for me because if you didn't vote for me, why, imagine what those Republicans would be doing to you. Wait a minute. I thought the whole reason I was voting for you is because the Republicans are doing all this stuff. See the game that they play, how they whipsaw you against a system that they set up. And a lot of black folks have been on the treadmill so long that a lot of them can't imagine getting off of it. To them, this is normal. And I'm telling you, it's anything but. They've invested in this lie because they just can't let it go. And I'm telling you, you have to. The white political forces don't care personally. I'm talking about the men who really run the political system. They don't really personally care if the Democrats are rendered politically irrelevant. To the power brokers, that doesn't really bother them. But I can tell you right now, the rank and file white person on the street whose politics is left of center and who's invested in the system, they will care. And you see, ultimately, that's who our efforts are truly aimed at. That's who the true target is. We're not trying to deal with the puppet master. We're looking at that white publican. We're turning up the heat on them because they're used to the idea of they do something and something happens. Now, can they be made to toe the line? Of course. Not automatically, not instantly. But yes, they can be made to toe the line when it hurts enough, when they're frustrated enough, when they realize that there is a political wall in the way that is neutralizing that left of center white vote, and that is the former slaves. But don't go kidding yourself. This isn't going to change the rank and file dependence on the system of guarantees, goodies, and giveaways that they have. But by making it where they can't even get their way half the time, which is the bare minimum that they're used to. They're used to getting their way at least half the time. By setting up a roadblock to that, you're going to see a lot more of them beginning to wonder, how do they change it? On my Twitter page and in various videos on this very channel, I was pointing out to you how you already had white folks who were talking to Joe Biden at his little coffee clashes, already asking them about reparations and asking, well, is it possible that something could be done? Now, what they're thinking is something small. It's like, well, we should have a jobs program for inner city people. We'll call that reparations. But the point is, it's because of the fact that we haven't been treating our tangibles like a big deal that we've been giving everybody else a free pass to act like it doesn't mean anything anyway. Because, hey, if the former slaves are not raising holy hell about their interest, why should anyone else take it seriously? So what's happening now is we are raising hell about it. We're showing that we are one issue voters, and the issue ain't integration, and the issue is not interracial sexual access. The issue is tangibles for us. We're being specific. And you see, now that we're being specific, what's happening is the bastards try to figure out, could they use weasel words? Could they talk around our interests? And when you showed that that wasn't going to happen, then what happened was you had Bernie Sanders. Not feasible. Just not feasible. It ain't feasible. You had Elizabeth Warren. A check for what? Kamala Harris. You think I'm going to do something that only benefits black people? No. See, when you put the bastards' backs to the wall and then you make it clear, nah, we're not, we understand that you just tried to talk around the answer. Make it clear to them. We know what kind of practiced bit of rhetoric that your handlers have given you to say. We know the little verbal sidestep you would try to do, and it won't work. When they understand that, when they get pegged down on it and you let them know you're not going to let you slither out of this one, you're going to have to answer this question. And there's only so much dissembling and word salad and babbling and talking in circles that they're actually willing to do, because part of the problem happens to be they know that there's a whole lot of casual racists who they're trying to court the votes of who are watching, and the casual racist vote that the Washington Post was praising as being the saviors of the Democratic Party, the new base of the Democratic Party is going to be those racially resentful whites. They know that a lot of them are watching. When a Kamala Harris is sitting there trying to talk around our tangibles, she knows that she can't talk around it too long, because the longer that she lets the conversation go on without giving a flat no, she knows that those casual racists are going to be looking and going, why aren't you just telling these niggers no? She's soft on reparations. You can see her waffling. Wouldn't take much to pull her to the side of the niggers. They know, the Democrats know that they have got to give a flat no, and that they can't take too long to do it. That's why Bernie Sanders came straight up the middle. Nope, unfeasible. He understands exactly what it is that his would-be new Democratic Party base wants to hear. The people who he's hoping that he'll be able to make into this the foundation of a new half-baked political coalition. They know exactly what it is that they want to hear, and the Washington Post knows it too. So you got the Democrats, you got the white media working together, trying to forge the narrative that, hey, all of these racially resentful white folks, why, these are going to be the saviors of America. We are going to use our media to try to spin it that they're not a whole bunch of racists and bigots, that instead these individuals, why, they're morally conscientious and, well, they're just racially aware. That's all. Gee, in my day, we used to understand that it was racially hostile, not racially aware. But this is the white media trying to figure out, how do they rebrand all of these unreconstructed Confederates, be they Southern or Yankee, be they East Coast, West Coast, or anything in between, or in Alaska or Hawaii or anywhere else. They're trying to figure out, how do we rebrand them as something else? The white media is going to go ahead and we're going to put a new coat of paint on the old, rusted, desiccated, decaying husk of anti-black racial hostility in America. And the Democrats are going to be praised for catering to this. Instead of telling them that there's something wrong with being a racially resentful white person, instead they're going to tell them that, oh, you guys, you're hard-working white people. That's the game going on here. You see how it's all coming together, don't you? Strategy ain't new. Only thing that is new is that since they could not be able to overcome us in 2016 or 2018, now what's happening is they're having to be a little more direct, a lot more direct, actually. They have to. Because what we've been saying has been permeating the zeitgeist, if I may use one of the white media's pet phrases. And they know that there's a lot of casual racists watching. And they're demanding that the Democrats take the hard line. They want to be reassured. Hey, you're not going to upset the racial hierarchy, are you? We know these niggers have been putting pressure on you. They've been getting in your faces. They've been making a lot of noise. We need to be reassured that the niggers are not going to get anywhere with you. We need to be reassured of that. And Kamala Harris gave the reassurance. Bernie Sanders gave the reassurance. Elizabeth Warren gave the reassurance. Pete Buttigieg gave the reassurance. That's what's going on here. The white media is giving the reassurance. They're getting on code. Yep, all the bad guys are getting on code. This is the kind of drumbeat of truth that YouTube's trying to snuff out. They don't want anyone talking like this and exposing the racist game that's going on. I didn't even say it myself. The Washington Post said it. So now you got YouTube saying, don't say what the Washington Post is telling you. That's what they're saying. Do not quote the white media. And while I agree that the white media is fomenting and encouraging hate speech, it is not true that the black media has. But this is just the classic case of they're white and they say so. And by the way, is putting pressure on the rank and file white left of center person on the street, is that the totality of what we're doing? Of course not. We won't be sitting around on our thumb. We're not going to be sitting on our hands waiting for the beneficiaries of white supremacy to discover religion. We're going to be making moves on our own. But understand, that's who is the most susceptible to react to the breaking of the political left arm of white supremacy. Before you see the Democrats themselves finally decide that we have broken their will, first what's going to be happening is to look at the ground underneath the Democrats. And that's going to be coming down to their new would-be political foundation. That new would-be political base. They're going to be watching what those guys do. And as those people on the street get more and more frustrated, realizing the Republicans, that the political system is becoming more and more one-sided and that they cannot reconcile themselves with that for a variety of reasons, they're going to be wondering, how the hell do we at least get our way part of the time? They're going to be looking all of a sudden and realizing, whoops, this would-be voter coalition didn't work out. The white media, and that includes YouTube, does not want a steady drumbeat of this fact. They do not want anyone making sure to keep black folks on code because they know how easily black folks forget. They know how easily black folks are just waiting to throw up their hands and say, I quit. You get Negroes every once in a while, whenever you point out what needs to be changed in the black community, instead of them saying, you're right, we need to put the pressure on black folks who ain't doing right, instead it becomes, oh, we ain't going to get it together. We can't do this. We can't do that. We drove them fools out. I've been hearing that for over a decade now, and those of you who are my day one people, you've been hearing it along with me. Who has been right and who has been wrong? All of the naysayers who said it couldn't be done, we've been getting closer and closer to our goal, steady steps, but hey, don't ask for overnight results. We didn't get in this situation overnight. We got into it over the course of 500 years, and especially the last 150 years of political idiocy. We're not getting out of this overnight, but we will be getting out of it. And what you see now is the white media attempting to censor the information so that the alleged black voter support that Joe Biden claims to have but doesn't really have, they want to make sure that that doesn't totally and thoroughly evaporate. The few baby boomers out there who are, their hearts are going pitter-pat because they saw Joe Biden, they saw a dramatization of the failed fantasy that they've been chasing, the putrid phantom that they've been pursuing since the 1950s. The black baby boomers, that's the reason why integration mattered so much to them. They were like, I will be an honorary white person and they'll pat me on the head and I will finally be accepted by the dominant society and oh, it'll be so great. That's what the world they've been looking for. And they were experiencing it kinda vicariously through Barack Obama. Barack Obama was a puppet pretending to have power, and to a lot of black folks, that's enough. Well, it ain't enough for us. White power wants to encourage and stoke the racially resentful white contingent by having the white media cheerlead that they should be prioritized, as if they haven't before, as if, gee, this is the first time in the country's history that we have a chance to do something for white people. Yeah, because up until now, this country's done absolutely nothing for white people. Giving them land stolen from murdered Native Americans, most of them black, by the way. No, that's not doing anything for white folks. Homestead Act, no, it ain't doing nothing for white folks. Allowing them to have free labor, our ancestors, no, they ain't doing nothing for white folks. More land grants in the 19th century, no, that ain't enough. And how about the housing grants, small business grants, and the free education that was given to white GIs, only to white GIs coming back from World War II? No, that's not doing anything for white people. Yeah, this country's never done anything for white people. Gee, I wonder how white people made it this long. You see, they want to go ahead and tell them that they've got some sort of phony grievance. They want to make sure, the white media wants to play the game of, we're going to try to rebrand racism as being nothing more we're going to try to rebrand white supremacy in the political, among the electorate, as being nothing more than racial awareness. But they want to do it in a way where they don't have to pay any sort of price for it, where they don't get called out for it. Most black people do not read the Washington Post. And while it's good that you don't read that trash, it's never good not to know what your enemy is saying. And that's where the black media comes in. We tell you what the bad guys are saying. And the Negroes who are silly enough to be backing either political party at this late date, they are the purest manifestation of low information voters. But the more we push, the more we work, the more this message is going to get out there to the masses, and the more people who will sign on to it. Not all, not even most, but a critical mass. We don't need most black folks on board, because most people, when it comes to any sort of war, any sort of revolution, any sort of social upheaval, it's always a minority that changes the world, not the majority. And this is what Jason Black said years and years ago when he said, I'm not afraid of small numbers so long as the numbers are powerful and brought enough resources to inflict their will. Resources meaning material resources, but also meaning human resources. How many of us are out here putting in the elbow grease? How many of us are out here doing the work? How many of us are out here when the call goes out, ready and willing to aggressively act as the force multiplier that we need? You see, a lot of black folks have conditioned themselves to ignore reality. If they happen to come across the occasional media article from the white media talking about racially resentful white people, I can tell you right now, when that Washington Post article went live, for the black folks who might have actually seen it on one of the aggregator websites like MSN or something, I can tell you right now, as soon as they saw something about racially resentful whites, they immediately decide, well, I ain't got to read this. That's what happens. It goes straight down the memory hole, because instead of black folks going, wait a minute here, you got a so-called mainstream newspaper website actually saying to prioritize racially resentful people. This is hostile against black folks. And they're praising Joe Biden for appealing to that contingent. Whoa, Joe Biden can't get my vote. Instead of that being the reaction, instead, in less than a second, most black folks would see an article like that. They see a headline like that, and they would immediately blast right by it at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It wouldn't even occur to them that maybe this is something that they ought to dwell on, and that they need to look at this, take a closer look, and it's time to do some contemplation, time to rethink some of your assumptions and some of your knee-jerk reactions. That's what should happen, but it's not what does happen. But on the other hand, if you have a black media operating in your interest, one that repeats this fact day after day and makes sure that it stays front of mind by reminding you of it, then those same black people who previously would just blow right by something like this and not even think about it, not even let it seep in, what happens is they have a harder time ignoring it because there's a black media that won't let them ignore it. Oh, you may have missed it when you flew by it at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but the black media didn't miss it, and we're not going to let you miss it. And sure, you'll probably fast forward or skip this part. Professor Black, he's telling me not to trust the Washington Post. I love me some Washington Post. Yeah, it'll become more difficult for you to do the more I remind you. Repetition is indeed the mother of learning, but what we don't want is for you to be repeating lies from the white media. We need you to be repeating the facts from the black media. And this is the ugly secret of the Democrat Party's plan, or rather the left arm of white supremacy's plan, to put together a non-black voter coalition. And you think it's going to be just some LGBTers and it's going to be just a few immigrants. Now they're making it clear. We're going to make the Democratic Party into a welcoming home for the most backward, anti-black, hostile elements in the society. Now, keep in mind, even under the best of circumstances, they know that they're still going to need a certain number of black voters. That's the reason why they want all these pathetic attempts to try to figure out if they can fool black women. Oh, we'll pay some lip service to powerful black women. I posted on my Twitter page about how you had this idiotic article making the rounds, and it was on Business Insider, and it was on AOL and a number of other places, So that's how you know the white media, this is something that they want out there. This is something they want people to see. Talking about the most powerful women in political strategy. And they had Simone Mammy Sanders as one of them. I'm sitting here thinking, what a joke. But these are the lengths that they're going to. See, they're not actually going to be discussing power, because now that they realize you've discovered the vocabulary of power, that someone's taught you the vocabulary of power, and that now you're actually talking specifics that are going to change things. You're not talking about stuff that ain't going to change anything. No more talk about jobs. We're talking about businesses. And no more talk about acceptance and social doors being open. We're talking about tangibles. Keep your acceptance. We're here for that check. We're here for that cheddar. Well, Dr. King had a dream. To hell with the dream. We done woke up. The question now is not how do we get white society to accept us. The only question we're asking is where the bread at? You done broke everybody else off. Now you gonna break us off. And we ain't leaving it to chance. That's the kind of discourse they don't want happening. And for you to remember how the white media is attempting to array the most hostile anti-black forces in the country against you, and that they're trying to find a way to sanitize the Democrats' putrid racist strategy. They're trying to find a way to whitewash it. Pun intended. They're trying to find a way to glamorize it. And they're trying to find a way to justify it. Well, you got these white voters who happen to be suspicious of Black Lives Matter as well. When they're suspicious, that usually is a matter of them saying, the cops aren't out there just murdering black people. That's just a lie. The cops don't do that. If you niggers just do what the cops say, you won't get hurt. That's the suspicion of Black Lives Matter. That's how it manifests itself. It's not suspicion. And it's not a matter of being contemptible of Black Lives Matters. It's a matter of being contemptible of Black lives, period. And this is who the Democrats are attempting to appeal to. And this is who YouTube, that is Google, doesn't want black people hearing the reality of. They don't want anyone banging that drum, because what happens is every day more and more black people are hearing this message. And the ones who might have rejected it at first, there's more and more of them who are hearing it and going, you know what? The more we actually listen to this, the more that events play themselves out. It's playing out exactly as the black media said it would. The more we look at this, the same things that we said, oh, them Democrats, they ain't trying to appeal to the racist vote. Now they're looking and going, oh my God, they are, just like the black media said. That's what's going on here. The more we talk, a lot of the stuff that seemed like it was far-fetched, now what's happening is everybody's seeing it happen right in front of them. And they're realizing this is who they should be listening to. And if they listen to us not merely on the events as they come to pass, then what happens is they're going to be listening to what the black media's prescriptions for all of these maladies happen to be. And that's the real fear. Black folks are going to start listening to the black media and acting on what the black media says. You see, in 2015, people weren't saying cut the check. Now you got presidential candidates like Tom Steyer saying it. They hear us and they fear us. Not merely the political puppets pretending to run for president. Not merely the racist tech companies like Google. Not merely their would-be pro-black wannabe charlatans, but now everyone's hearing the message. But most importantly, the United States' former slaves are now hearing this message. Too pervasive to be overlooked, too strong to be ignored. They're hearing this message, and they don't fear this message. Quite the opposite. They are embracing this message. Because we're talking about neutralizing the racial resentment that's coming against us. That's what we're talking about. And you got these forces arrayed against us who are determined that that's not going to happen. But we have already made up our minds that white supremacy is a disease whose time has finally come to pass. It's time for white supremacy to be resigned to the trash heap of history. And no amount of propaganda is going to give it a new lease on life. No amount of bigots in Silicon Valley are going to try to run interference for it and try to forestall the inevitable. We understand exactly how these things work. We understand that it's when the enemy is on his last legs, it's when you got the bastard cornered, that's when he tends to start fighting and thrashing the hardest. When he realizes that he's all but done and he's just kicking and fighting the hardest because this is basically his last win. This is all he's got. That's what white supremacy is showing right now. What they're doing is they're giving a preview of what's going to happen when white supremacy finally falls. Now, this is not going to be happening for a long, long while. I told you and have continued to tell you, toppling white supremacy will be the work of generations. But right now, we are laying the glorious foundation of that effort. That's what we're doing right now. We're giving Black empowerment a strong start. Or rather, we're giving the fall of white supremacy a strong start.